Hello there, my name's Joe and welcome to my channel. Today I thought we'd take a quick look at using Adobe Camera Raw to open up JPEGs. We'll also look at some other file types, but mostly we're going to be looking at JPEGs. So without further aplomb, I've no idea what that word means, but it sounds good. Let's jump to it. Okay, so just to familiarize ourselves, I'm in Adobe Photoshop. I've got a very nice welcome here from Mr. Adobe, and I've recently opened up 4 images. One is a RAW file. It's Fuji RAW, so it's a .raf RAW file, and then 3 similar images, which are PNG, TIFF, and JPEG. And I'm just going to very quickly open these one at a time, just so you can see what the differences are. Okay, so if we start with the RAW file first, if I just left click on it, the file will open, and it will open into Adobe Camera Raw. Now that means that we have all the basic editing tools that we need to make our adjustments to the image before going into full-blown Adobe Photoshop. So here you can see we got the white balance, exposure, etc., etc. We can we have access to cropping, the healing tools, the masking, and we've also even got the presets as well. So we've got a full suite of editing tools, very similar to what you would see if you're a user of Adobe Lightroom Classic. The layout may be slightly different, but the tools are exactly the same because it uses the same engine. So the editing tools that you get in Lightroom Classic are the same as these here. So there you go. So any RAW file in Photoshop will be opened initially into Adobe Camera Raw, and then once you've made the initial adjustments that you want to make, you click on open, and then that will take you into full-blown Photoshop. Okay, so that's RAW files out of the way. I'm just going to get rid of this file. No, I don't want to save it. Okay, so next one I'm going to open up is the PNG. Now this file, if I just left click on it, you'll see here, so I've left clicked on it and it's open directly into Photoshop. It hasn't given me the benefits of Adobe Camera Raw first, but we can get there, and we will do in a second. So this file is a low resolution image that I generated in AI using Stable Diffusion. So I'm just using it as an example. But we are in full-blown Photoshop. I don't have easily to hand the tools I'd like to use to adjust it. However, we can get to it through the filter button. So under filter, we have Camera Raw filter, and that's how we would open up Camera Raw for any file type, or to go back to Camera Raw at any time if we need to. So let's open that up, and we now have the tools again that we wanted and that we saw in the demo for the opening the raw version. So make your adjustments to that file, click OK, and then you're back into full-blown Adobe Photoshop. Let's get rid of that. So that was the PNG file. The TIFF file, click on the button. So the TIFF will be exactly the same. I'll just very quickly open it. You see, open straight into Photoshop, but I can open up Camera Raw and use that, and we're done. So just a demo. Say no to that. And that now leaves us with the JPEG file. Okay, so let's open the JPEG file, and we'll spend a bit more time on this. We'll make some adjustments and then see what's good and what's not so good. So I'm going to left click on the JPEG, and not unsurprisingly, it's opened straight into Adobe Photoshop. Now we can, same as all the others, we can go into Adobe Camera Raw by clicking on Camera Raw filter, as we did with the others. So let's do that. this time let's make some adjustments, and then we'll see what effect that has to us when we go into full-blown Photoshop. So okay, so we've got this image here. I'm gonna just pretty much just destroy it. I'm gonna turn it into black and white. I'm gonna ramp up the exposure, so just making this a truly awful image. And well, actually it's not so bad, is it? Let's make it worse than that. Let's really kill it. Let's turn off the highlights there. Okay, so destroyed this image here. I'm going to click OK. The image is now opened up in Adobe Photoshop as expected, and we can go on and use the big boy tools to our heart's content. Now, however, if you think, oh, actually, those changes I just made weren't the greatest, were they? I know what I'll do. I'll go back into Adobe Camera Raw and I'll change them back. Well, it doesn't work. You can't undo what you've just done there. So you're at a bit of an impasse, really. So you can start trying to readjust it back to how it was in terms of these sliders, but you're not going to turn it back into a color image again. You don't have that option now. So let's cancel out of that. So I guess what you need to do if you're working along that file path is to get your edits correct in Adobe Camera Raw before you open it up into Photoshop. Now, one way to get around that is you see here that I had the history box open, particularly really just for this demo. And if you want to get to that, if you don't have that on your screen, just go to Window, come down, find your history, select that, and the box will open for you. So what you can do to undo the damage that you've caused in Camera Raw is, well, first of all, you'll see here under Camera Raw, you haven't got all the individual changes that you've made. So I can't say, oh, I just want to put it back to color, but I'll keep the contrast and anything else I changed. It's all or nothing, but you can remove that. So I could, via history, I could trash that. I'll put that in the trash. And we're back to where we were. I could then open up Camera Raw again and try and make a better selection of adjustments. So that's one way, but it's not brilliant. So I want to show you a different way of making adjustments in Camera Raw, hopefully, that we can go back to and adjust them if we need to. So what I'll do, I'm just going to close this down just to get rid of anything that we've previously done. I don't want to save any of those changes. And I'm now just going to open up this JPEG again. So this time what I'm going to do is come over to the layer in the right hand pane here, and I'm going to right click on it, and I'm going to select Convert to Smart Object. There we go. Now you see here that the layer now has got this tiny little icon in the bottom right of it where it tells us that we've converted it to a smart object. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to open up the Camera Raw filter, and I'm going to go through what we did earlier. I'm going to change it to black and white. I'm going to make some horrendous changes to the exposure. Pretty ghastly. I'll do the same with the contrast. Let's just make that just truly awful. There we go. And I'm going to click OK. Now, we've got our terrible picture, but before we move on, if we have a look now over here, we've got an extra line down here, and we've got an extra icon that we didn't have before is now available to us. So if we go back and think, well, no, this was a truly bad mistake I made here in Adobe Camera Raw, I'd really like to go back and undo that. Well, now we can do that. So if we come across here, if I right click and select Edit Smart Filter, let's do that. We are now back into Camera Raw. If I click on the black and white, we are now back to color. If I click on the exposure, double click on it, that will bring it back to default. And I'll just check the other levels there. And we are back to where we were. So we can, by going into Adobe Photoshop first and making the layer a smart object, we then have much more flexibility to use Adobe Camera Raw. Now, I find that really quite helpful. So I won't make any further adjustments to this because hopefully I've made the point. We've done something in Camera Raw, we didn't like it, but we now, by turning it into a smart object there, we now have the ability to go back and adjust, and that's the point I really wanted to make here. So we'll click OK. And then we're back into full-blown Adobe Photoshop, and then we can do all the stuff that boys who wear big pants do in messing about their images. I tend to use Lightroom Classic. Most of the stuff I would do would be either in Classic, or the equivalent for me would be in Adobe Camera Raw. Everything I need's in that. So I don't have that much use personally for Photoshop, but if you are in it, hey, this is a tip worth knowing, I think. And that's about it as far as adjusting JPEGs go. I'll just get rid of that. No, I don't want to save those changes. Just one other, or a couple of other things. If you want, you can, where are we? Edit. If you go to Edit Preferences and then Camera Raw, you can, under File Handling, you can set your Photoshop to automatically open your JPEGs straight away into Camera Raw if you want it. So you'll notice by default it says automatically open JPEGs with settings. Now if you select the drop down, if you were to select automatically open all supported JPEGs, and you can do this the same for the Tiff file type as well if you want, but if you select that and then select OK and then open a JPEG, you see it's gone straight into Adobe Camera Raw. So if that's useful to you, that's great. It's not great for me because I like to use that little trick that I've just showed you. I want to adjust that layer and have the ability to go backwards and forwards within Camera Raw. So I'm going to put that back to where it was for me. And save that OK. And the last little tip, nothing to do with opening files though, is just if in Photoshop you have these recent images, I don't personally particularly like having them here, and I had to keep clearing this down because I didn't want to share images of other stuff that I was working on that was of no interest to the video that I'm making. And if you want to clear down these recents, then just go to File, and you see you've got Open Recent, and you've got a clear selection here. So Clear Recent File List, and that gets rid of your recents for you if you need to do that. And there we go. I hope you found this useful, and thank you for your time, and goodbye.